So, hi everybody. Welcome to the panel. My name is Cynthia Overton. I am a principal research analyst with American Institutes for Research, and I am also the very proud chair of Access AIR, which is our employee resource group that focuses on our employees and our clients with disabilities. Unfortunately, Richard's plane was delayed and he's not able to moderate the panel, so I'm just filling in for him. In the interest of time, we're going to just dive in. I'm going to ask our panelists just to introduce themselves very briefly and let us know a little bit about their employee resource group and affinity group. I'll ask a few questions and then we're going to leave at least 10 minutes for Q&A. So I hope you'll think of some good questions for the panelists. So Daniel, why don't you start?
Sure. So I'm Daniel Sonnenfeld. I do technical program management at Salesforce. Technical program management is very much like herding cats in a rainstorm. It's a lot of fun doing that kind of work. I've been there for 6.5 years now. Salesforce is a great company, about 30,000 employees. And about 1.5 years ago, I co-founded Ability Force. You'll notice everything at Salesforce ends with the word force. So Ability Force is what we call Ohana group. Ohana is the Hawaiian word for family. These are employee resource groups. So Ability Force is the Ohana group for employees with disabilities. And worldwide, we have over 700 members. We welcome allies into the group, so there is not a count of people with disabilities. And we have chapters around the world. The largest one is here at headquarters, but we have them in Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Indianapolis in the United States, Toronto, Canada, and Atlanta.
Thanks, Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Egan, and I work for Sprint. Sprint is 30,000 people, and we're so similar size to Salesforce. My role at Sprint is a community relations manager focused on the blind and low vision community, working with the blind and low vision community throughout the country to make sure that Sprint has accessible products, accessible solutions, and great customer care so that those of us who are blind or low vision don't get stuck when we're in the worst situation possible, when our phone doesn't work, right? And I am a member of what's called The Real Deal. That's the name of our ERG for people with disabilities, and I'm going to do my best to recite this. So I'm putting myself on the spot right here. It stands for resourceful, empowering, awareness, limitless for disabled employees accessing life.
Ah, good job.
Wowee, that's a long one. Anyway, I'm a part of that resource group. We have 250 people in the Real Deal with all sorts of disabilities to share experiences together. Go ahead.
Thank you, Michael.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Seaver, and I am a senior learning consultant at Kaiser Permanente. I work for our Kaiser Foundation hospitals, training and onboarding new employees and physicians on our electronic medical record that we use at Kaiser in Northern California. I'm also the president and co-founder of Capability. Capability is the business resource group for employees with disabilities and their advocates at KP. We have 730 members as of this morning, representing every single region and entity that our business has. So we have 7 different regions, and I think 3 or 4 different business entities, and we represent everybody within the organization.
Great. So let's start with our first question. Why did your organization form an ERG or affinity group focused on disabilities? So, Daniel, you want to start?
So at Salesforce, our employee resource group, the Ohana group, all employee-driven. As a group of employees have a common affinity, they want to get together to be able to support each other or to affect change. The group can form, and then we have the Salesforce requirements for a employee resource group to be officially recognized. They have to have at least 10 employees within that region. So it applies to both global as well as in each region. So being a co-founder, the main reason why I wanted to found it is to be able to improve the situation for accessibility within Salesforce as an employee. I was dealing with some issues because of my hearing loss. I was dealing with some issues with arranging for interpreters at events, and should we have a centralized fund for that, or have each department be responsible for funding for their own employees? And then as I talked to, there were two other people who were involved. One was an employee whose brother was deaf, and another employee who was in charge of ADA accommodation. So the three of us, we co-founded, and I'm currently the president of the group.
Kelly?
Well, I'm a latecomer to the Real Deal. I've only been with Sprint a couple years, but I understand that the Real Deal was founded by our director of accessibility, Mike Ellis, and we we have about 7 various affinity groups, or ERGs, at Sprint. And Mike Ellis and his team really, at one time, were called the Relay Team. So most of those employees are deaf or hard of hearing, and they decided it was time to create, a resource behind the scenes to support each other and other employees with disabilities throughout the organization. So they were the starters of it, and they are, and it's done a great job. It's grown, it's expanded, and then it's shrunk as layoffs and things like that happen, but it's still there and solid.
Thank you. Michael?
Okay. Well, Kaiser Permanente is a federal contractor, so I would be lying if I said that, or if I didn't say that the Section 503 reporting regulations didn't play a part in our founding of capability. But that's not the only reason why. Kaiser has 200,000 plus employees, about 25,000 physicians. We have disabled employees. We've always had them. And as a Bay Area-based company, we've always wanted to be an employer of choice for people with disabilities. So when the business looked at that, and they said, okay, we have affinity groups for gender, we have affinity groups for race, we have affinity groups for sexual orientation. Why don't we have one for people with disabilities? And it became the right time to do this, the right time to launch our group. We have to have the ability to identify different needs of our members, and certainly our members, our patients, have disabilities, and the best people to do that are our employees. And so, yes, Section 503 played a big part of this, but I don't believe that was the driving force. The driving force was, why don't we take these people that are already here, already our members, already our patients, already our employees, and utilize their skills and utilize their knowledge and their experience and make the organization better for everybody.
So what's been the most important lesson that you've learned working with your ERG? Who would like to start?
I'll go.
All right.
All right. The most important thing I've learned, and I've been in it from the beginning since 2013, is the more successful you become, the more people that want a piece of the pie. So when we launched, I had one executive sponsor, and nobody really cared, besides that executive sponsor, what we did. Well, as we grew, as we became more successful, as we became more visible within the organization, different pieces of the organization wanted to have input, wanted to have a stake in it, and that's all good. I think a successful BRG is one where everybody finds value in it. So that's leadership, that's marketing, that's public relations, that's your diversity and inclusion department if you have one. So I look at it as a badge of honor, the fact that people want to have input as to how the resource group is being run and managed.
Great. Kelly?
Could you repeat the question?
How about if I repeat the question and I'll go to Daniel and come back to you. So what's the most important lesson that you've learned working with your ERG?
So one area where we struggled has been in active membership. There are a lot of people who participate in the group with the online forums that we have, but to help run the group, organize the activities, it can be difficult to find people. Everybody's very busy in their everyday job, and so on top of that, add time to run a group for a lot of people is just too much. So the great way to get people who have time and energy to be involved is with organized volunteer activities, helping local nonprofits that serve people with disabilities. And having those people who participate in those volunteer activities, they're already being willing to give some of their time to that, and generally they get very excited. Oh, I'd love to help organize more of these activities, or oh, actually I'd like to help bring more people with disabilities into Salesforce. So that organizing those volunteer activities has been a real driver to increasing membership of people who will roll up their sleeves and participate.
So Kelly, at Sprint, what would you say the greatest lessons learned would be with your ERG?
Well, I'd say the most recent lessons that we've really discovered are that having the internal focus for an ERG is really great, right? We have resources for our employees and each other, and have people we can talk to and learn how to get through the organization and be successful with everything, and so on and so forth. However, what we've discovered recently is really our ability to do outreach into the community outside of Sprint, and using the relay members, much as you were just saying, as volunteers to work with work events where we're engaging with the blind and low vision community, for example. People from the ERG work with me at these various shows. And what happens is we sort of mirror our audience at that point. And the audience mirrors back to all the people that are engaged in the event that we're doing the right things. And that continues to build the support for our internal ERG.
All right, now let's talk about the biggest success that you can think of in terms of your ERG. What has been the biggest success, biggest impact, greatest accomplishment that you would say your ERG has achieved?
I'll start. We recently had an event in Kansas City where Sprint's corporate headquarters is, and we're dispersed as employees all over the country, but we went to the corporate headquarters for our initial accessibility conference, which included a lot of focus on the Real Deal ERG. And so the Real Deal had a panel, basically, which included inviting agencies from the outside, all types of disability agencies to participate and have a table. And then we invited our partners throughout the company to come to our event. We called it A Taste of Technology, and we had exhibits set up, booths set up for people to show how for our own employees, to see how we come to our audience, our consumers out there, and share accessible products, accessible support, and so on. And it was very, very successful. People didn't realize this. It's like anything else. If you're not within the disability community, you really don't recognize a lot of the things that are going on to serve people of all kinds of abilities. So it was really great.
Okay, awesome. Daniel, greatest success?
So many of you may have heard of Dreamforce, which is the annual Salesforce conference. It's one of the largest events in San Francisco. With over, this year, coming up next month, we'll have 171,000 people already registered. So when we have that many people, the conference is spread out all the way through San Francisco. And we have, of course, attendees, Salesforce partners or Salesforce customers who attend the conference who may be in wheelchairs or who may have be blind or have a vision impairment. And getting around a conference that large can be very difficult for them. So what we decided to do after the Ability Force ERG last year is we recruited volunteers to help these customers get around the conference. We had over 40 employees act as volunteers who contributed over 200 hours last year alone towards making the conference, in one way, the most accessible conference we've ever had. And we're poised to repeat that again this year with more than 50 volunteers. So it's great to know that we're not just giving back to the greater community here in San Francisco, but we're also being ambassadors for people attending the conference from around the world.
Michael, tell us about the good news of Kaiser Permanente.
Absolutely. Unlike my counterparts up here that have had large events where big name recognition, our greatest success has been smaller in my mind. The things that make me the most proudest is when I get the emails from our employees and say, thank you I now know how to reach out to my manager and ask for an accommodation. Or thank you, I'm so glad this group exists because I've always felt like I was alone on an island. Or thank you, at my medical center or at my office, we had a discussion during a team meeting about people's differences. So I think in terms of Kaiser Permanente, the successes have been numerous, but they've been harder to measure in terms of greater impact for the organization overall, but we're taking small steps forward, and that's all that really is important to me, is that we keep moving forward, and I think the feedback we're getting from our employees is really driving that and really showing that as a success.
Okay, great. So before I ask my last question of the panel, I do have a question of the community. How many of you all have an employee resource group focused on disability? So I see 1, 2 hands up. Oh, 3. Thank you. That's my colleague Mariello, who's my co-chair of Access AIR. So then we've got 3 people who have employee resource groups or affinity groups. So my question for the panel is, what advice would you give an organization, a tech company that is interested in forming an employee resource group or is in the early stages of forming? What advice would you have for them to be successful?
I'm happy to start off with that.
Go for it.
So I would think there are probably 4 things to keep in mind, especially in the first couple of years of forming the group. Is 1, focus on growth. Get employees involved, build the numbers. As I mentioned earlier, have volunteer events, have internal events with guest speakers, and get people excited about the group. And when you have that growth, you're also creating awareness, which is probably, again, a real key thing, similar to what you were saying, Michael, just helping employees who have hidden disabilities, who may not be comfortable disclosing about their disability, to be able to find out, oh, here's a great resource I'm not alone, I can actually excel here. So growth awareness should be, I think, if not the only 2, at least part of the major 2 initiatives that you first have. Also get an executive sponsor. Have somebody who will pave the way through in the company to make sure you have the visibility, the funding to accomplish your objective. And then probably, lastly, hold each other accountable. Set some goals each year for what you want to do that year with your ERG, and hold each other accountable for that. Because it's so easy for us to get consumed with our everyday work life that that our work on our ERG is going to fall behind.
Great, thank you, Kelly.
I'm going to keep it really simple. Just get started. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. It doesn't matter if you've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. Whether you start organically or from the top down, just get started. It's that simple to me.
Michael?
I shouldn't have gone last. That was my mistake here. I agree with exactly what Kelly and Daniel said. Executive sponsorship, big driver. Just getting started, big driver. The one thing I would add is make this part of your employee's job. Make it part of their review. So I'm a volunteer. I volunteer to do this. I have to ask my boss for time to do my events, but now it's part of my goals. It's part of my year-end evaluation. Was I successful? Did I do that? That provides the value for me, but it also provides the value for my individual boss to give me time to do this work, to get this started. I would love to say make it paid. If you have that ability in tech, make it paid. Little stipend here, little stipend there. If not, that's fine, I'm a volunteer, but make it part of their yearly goal to get this done.
Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left for Q&A, so are there any questions for our panel? Yes, is there a runner? And I think this is Jesse, who is an expert in D&I and with a particular focus on disabilities.
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia. I wanted to thank you so much for this. It was really helpful. One question I'd like to ask regarding your specific organizations is how much does your ERG focus on some of the wins that you've explained, which were awesome, and how much on building internal community for the employees with disabilities?
You want to take it?
Sure. So you're asking what kind of corporate support we have for building the employee resource group?
I can't hear.
No. It was a win. How do they celebrate wins and?
It's about like when the group gets together, how much is it about just like being a community and getting to know each other, and how much is it more about contributing to the wins that you've already talked about? Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
I would say with Sprint, we have focused and continue to focus on the internal community and expanding that community to include, all disabilities and understand all disabilities, rather than having silos of disabilities, learning about each other's requirements and needs. So really that internal focus on the things we can do to become better. And as we, have the opportunities to share and expand beyond that, that's when we do that more external outreach.
So the reason why I hesitated a little bit is, as I mentioned earlier, we're very employee driven. It's what interests us as leaders of the ERG, where we go with it. And each chapter around the world has their own focus. The chapter in Indianapolis is very focused on mental illness. The chapter in Australia and New Zealand is very focused on workplace accessibility. Here at headquarters, because all the engineering teams are here, we're very focused on product accessibility. But within those categories, we often work across the entire spectrum internally. And then with an external focus, again, it's very employee driven. We've recently had an employee who really wants to start an autism at work, type like SAP's autism at work, does something similar within Salesforce. So they will run and drive with that, and we'll exchange information. But each employee really takes it to where they want to go.
I would say at KP, most of the time we're focused internally. We're focused on our own success. We're focused on growing the membership. We're focused on what we're doing. I do communicate with our members quite often about our corporate success. So we were able to get a new piece of our electronic medical record. We'll focus on a patient's accessibility needs in a hospital or medical clinic. I do the communication for that to our group and then to the larger KP audience of why that's important and why that's a success for our business.
Thank you. Other questions?
Hi, Hello? Okay.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Heather and I work at Medallion. Thank you guys so much for sharing. My question for you guys is, we had one person really leading the charge for the Affinity group for disabilities, and that person left the company. So now the group has kind of disbanded. It's not having as much traction. So do you guys have any tips or advice on how to make your Affinity group sustainable for the future and not just relying on one person?
Can I go ahead and start with that one? Because we struggle with that as well. We have a small core team of people. Disabilities a group with, an affinity group for people with disabilities is a little tough, all right? Because you have to have someone, assuming they're disabled, that's sort of out and proud, right? And so how I was identified is leadership actually identified me. And they reached out to me and said, you've worked here for X number of years. We'd like you to lead this charge. Would you be willing to do so? And I said, sure, what does it pay? And they said, it's volunteer. And I said, no, thanks. And then they asked me a couple weeks later, and I said, sure, what does it pay? And they said, it's volunteer. And I said, no, thanks. And after like the third or fourth time, I finally said, yes, I'm willing to do it. But don't be afraid to reach out to someone who you know that maybe either has a disability, hidden or visible. But also, what I found is the real champions are people that have family members with disabilities. You find an employee that has a kid with a disability, and that's going to be there's your golden child right there.
Right.
So I would go that route. Instead of waiting for someone to come to you, go to them.
I could add to that. I was in that situation last year. I mentioned that there were 3 co-founders. The other 2 left last year. And I was looking at, okay, where do we go from here? And this is where the challenge that we met of having enough people involved in doing voluntary events, that has gotten more people with disabilities, both visible and invisible, involved in the group. And as Michael mentioned, allies are important, whether it's some family member or just someone who just wants to help. It does create an interesting question of having the visible leaders of the group not be part of that identity. And I don't really have a good answer for that. But I think the more visibility you have as a group, then the more chance you will then pick up people who might have not been willing to self-disclose. They'll think, oh, it's a visible group. Oh, maybe it's okay to have a disability and I can still be successful.
Kelly, any insight on that? That's a tough question.
They answered it beautifully.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Any other questions? We have a couple of minutes left. Okay, I don't see any hands, but I have another question. Do you all collaborate with any other employee resource groups or other affinity groups within your company?
Yes. I mean, intersectionality is so important, and especially for employee resource groups with disabilities, which is a small fraction, usually a very small fraction of a company's employee base. So we do recently, this being October, being National Disability Awareness Month, we've had a lot of internal events that we've collaborated with some of our other Ohana groups. For example, at the beginning of the month, we had a deaf-blind African-American woman, Haben Girma, who spoke at a corporate event, and it was phenomenal. And the reaction throughout all the other groups was very exciting. I think our membership increased probably by 20 or 30% just as a result of that one talk. And that intersectionality really brings out the best in people.
Others?
We at Sprint, I know we are making more of an effort to do that. We've recently really gotten a lot more engaged with our veterans ERG, because there's a lot of crossover in veterans and disabilities and things like that. Though our part of our intention may be different, we can cross over and have certainly had events that engage both of those ERGs. Beyond that, I think we're still working to become more engaging with the other 5 ERGs.
Okay, and I have just got word that we have to wrap up, so you're available for questions if you would like to continue the discussion. Thank you all so much for listening to this topic.